Darkcast Network. Indie pods with a dark side.
Are you tired of hearing about the Ted Bundys and Jeffrey Dahmers on True Crime podcasts? I thought so. We've got something just for you. I'm Pat.
And I'm Darcy, and we are the hosts of Pod of Terror, a true crime podcast that dives into lesser-known cases from around the world.
Grab a glass of wine and join us every Thursday as we discuss the most vile, despicable human beings on the planet.
It'll be a dark and twisted journey, so don't forget your drink. You're gonna need it.
We're looking forward to seeing you next Thursday.
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan. Hey Heather.
Hey.
How are you?
Well, I was doing okay until we sat down, and for the last 10 minutes, you've been making just weird sounds in the microphone because you know it aggravates me.
That's not why I'm doing it. And it's just stuff happens.
And then I have to scold you as if you were a child, because I spend hours working on this podcast, researching, writing, building a case for us.
Yeah.
And then you just make dumb noises. What is wrong with you?
It's in my description of my job.
Oh my gosh, I'm firing you.
All right.
We need a replacement.
So here we are.
We are looking for a replacement. So if you would like to be my co-host, please email us, mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com.
I will be screening all those emails. I will not
You don't even know how to check the email.
If you put an attachment on there, I'm in trouble.
Dylan, you have no idea how to check the email.
All
you
right.
don't even know the password. I would never entrust you with communication with any of our listeners.
I'm communicating right now. I'm taking my message to the masses.
Get back in your cage. Shoo. Yeah.
This is a beautiful day in the neighborhood, as a very wise man once said. And I can't wait to see what case you've worked so hard on for us.
Oh, now you can't wait, huh?
I
Okay.
can't.
No, this is a case, Dylan, that has troubled me since I first heard about it. And it's been covered by other podcasts. And what I find very interesting about this particular case is people's reaction to it.
Oh, really?
A lot of people want to blame the mother, and it is very easy to blame her, I will say, while other people tend to want to make excuses or excuses
for the mother?
Yeah, excuse her or make it as if she's not responsible or accountable for what happens in this case. So I'll be really interested to see what you think and maybe what some of our listeners think once they hear the story. This is going to be a two-parter. There's a lot of information out there. We are discussing part 1 today.
And this is the first part.
Yes.
This is number 1, right? This is volume 1.
I don't even think you know nothing. I don't even think you've been to school, is my reaction to you lately. Are you ready to get into this?
I'm ready.
I said I can't wait to hear what you have to say, but maybe I can wait.
See,
maybe we could wait a few more weeks. I don't know.
That's the part that got me really excited, that you want me to talk.
All right, Dylan. I want to begin by discussing how cycles of poverty, dysfunction, and trauma often move through families, not as isolated events, but as inherited patterns that quietly shape each generation's reality. Children raised in unstable environments marked by financial strain, violence, addiction, or neglect often internalize survival behaviors that help them endure the present, but limit their ability to thrive later. These learned responses can affect education, emotional regulation, relationships, creating barriers that are difficult to overcome without support. And over time, unresolved trauma can manifest in similar circumstances for the next generation, not because of personal failure, but because the conditions and coping mechanisms have been passed down and reinforced by limited access to resources and opportunity.
Oh, now me and you were discussing this very thing the other day, and it's the age-old nature versus nurture as far as how someone turns out. And what I asked you was, I'm sure the way you were raised, the household really matters, but I wondered if the reason that people kind of continue these similar behaviors generation after one after another is maybe because they're wired the same way. Maybe they have a similar brain chemistry, like
Like it's inherited, genetic.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's part of it. I definitely think, I believe that trauma is imprinted on DNA and it is passed down through generations. But I also think that the environment you grow up in plays a big part of how you turn out.
Well, yeah, I really do think that's been the answer the entire time people have had this conversation forever, is it's a combination of the two, nature and nurture.
It can be. And I think this case today is going to kind of bring about that question, right? Relisha Rudd was born to parents Shamika Young and Irving Rudd on October 29th, 2005 in Washington, D.C. Now, it is important to delve into Shamika's background to lay the groundwork for Relisha's story. Shamika had grown up in foster care. Her mother, Melissa Young, had a drug addiction, and her father was not around. In her early life with Melissa, it was unstable. They moved from place to place, including homeless shelters, until she entered foster care at 9.
That's so hard on a kid. You never have any roots. You never have long-term friends, so therefore you don't develop any type of a support network either at home or outside of the home, because some people have a hard home life, but at least they have like a good network of friends or something like that, or their favorite teacher they maybe had
maybe
for
extended family
and friends.
Like you can go spend the weekend with your friend or your cousin
And get a break
grandma's house, like to get away from whatever dysfunction is happening in your household.
Yeah, but when you're doing this Rolling Stone version of dysfunction where you have no roots, you move all the time, you don't make friends, you always feel, now I didn't grow up as extreme as this you're describing, but kind of moved all the time.
Well, you did have more of this type of childhood. The instability, financial instability, moving quite often, never really settling in one place.
Yeah, and I can tell you from
lacking that extended family, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and from my experience, you always feel out of place. Even when you find yourself, you think you've ended up maybe in a better circumstance, or for the moment things are okay, you can't even be comfortable then because you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, the other emergency to happen, the other calamity or whatever it is that's going to send you into, you never know where. And always being the new kid, that really sucks. Okay. Always being the new kid in school.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we both share a lot of similarities as far as like our childhoods go. And I definitely grew up with a lot of dysfunction in my household, domestic violence, teenage parents, like not a good situation. But I will say I did have stability. We lived in the same home for years and years before we, moved on to another place. And I did have close family. I lived on a creek that was actually named after my family, and I had my great-grandparents like a mile away, my grandparents a mile away, my uncle just down the road. So I did have a close-knit family, and so I was able to escape some of the dysfunction of my household by going to stay with like grandparents aunts and uncles, go to the lake with my grandparents, that kind of thing. So I did have like a bit of a reprieve, and I did have the stability that you didn't have, but it was also very, very dysfunctional.
Right.
In its own way, you know?
Yeah, and you certainly dealt with things I didn't deal with.
But I didn't move around a lot. And
yeah, but it's really tough, especially the younger you are as a kid, and it really sucks.
Well, yeah, you've talked about like leaving behind toys, bikes, things that were very important to you as a child because you didn't have a lot of material possessions, and just like abandoning those in the middle of the night to flee whatever situation.
Yeah. I mean, just literally get like a bag with a little bit of what you can put in that one bag, and you're leaving animals, your dogs, your cats, your bigger stuff. It's tough, and then you don't even know where you're going. You don't even know what's happening. All you know is you wake up, and your mom's just like, "Oh, we're leaving," and you're just like, "What the fuck?" But you know the drill. It's really crazy what kids can get used to. You know what I'm saying?
It is. Kids are very resilient and adaptable, but those types of things really do impact us in so many ways, and we carry those things into adulthood. Right?
It's true.
So in 1995, Shamika and her siblings were living in Alexandria, Virginia, a homeless shelter with their mother. Melissa was arrested for attacking a police officer, and she was convicted. At that time, Shamika and her two siblings were sent to live with their grandmother. Their grandmother realized caring for 3 young children was more than she could handle and placed the children in the foster care system. It has been reported that Shamika had behavioral issues with her grandmother as well as in foster care.
And that's not really surprising, honestly.
According to a foster mother who took in the 3 children, they were, quote, out of control. They destroyed property around the house and terrorized the family's pet rabbit. After 2 years, the foster mother asked that they be moved to a different home because of the issues such as lying, stealing, bedwetting, and general uncooperativeness.
Well, a lot of times you hear, oh, God, foster care, and you hear the horror stories, which there are many. Honestly, I've never met anyone who was in the system who doesn't have bad stories to tell. But I think there's also a lot of good people that try to provide a home and, do right by these kids to help them get on their feet. And I have to say, in this case, this foster parent tried for 2 years, dealing with a lot, it sounds like, and just couldn't, after a while, what can you do? What more can you do for these kids? So that's a really tough situation to be in.
Shamika spent a few months with another family, but was removed after threatening to kill everyone in the household. The state of Virginia sent Shamika to a 3rd foster home. This family was known for taking in the worst cases.
Wow.
However, they couldn't reach Shamika, who repeatedly ran away from their home. She threatened her foster parents and other children in the house. Shamika discussed self-harm. Her foster mother thought Shamika needed mental health treatment, and she was sent to a mental health facility called Grafton. Shamika recalled that this was a difficult time in her life because she felt alone. At the facility, she was strapped to the bed and injected with medications. After some time, she was released. Her foster family had adopted Shamika's brothers, but things did not improve when she returned from treatment. Her foster parents sent her back to Grafton, where she was diagnosed with a mild mental disability and described as sad and angry. She would not make eye contact or speak unless you prodded her.
So she's
to
kind
answer
of
questions.
It's like she's in a shell or kind of in her own world, if you will.
Perhaps, or I don't know if maybe she was just being this was part of the uncooperative. I'm just going to give you the silent treatment and the cold shoulder. I'm not really sure.
Now, I understand her being angry in a situation like this. But sometimes I wonder, in cases like this, when you hear these stories, aren't you glad to be that there's a foster household willing to try to give you a home and try to help you? Or do you think even in the midst of all that turmoil, a young person's even able to think think about
Well, I'm not saying it's that young people are like completely incapable of feeling gratitude or appreciation or just, wow, I'm in a safe place for once. But I do think that children, their minds are not, I mean, they're not quite developed yet. Their frontal lobe isn't developed, and they don't understand what to do with anger if they're not, I guess if they don't have therapy or they don't have coping mechanisms or someone's never helped them work through anger issues, they're just looking for someone to blame.
Right.
And even if the foster family is excellent and just doing a fine job and trying to provide a loving home, I think kids are angry and will lash out just because this is the easiest person for me to confront, even if I'm not mad at you directly.
You're just going to catch the brunt of my feelings.
Well,
basically.
yeah. I mean, when you're a parent, even, your kid does something wrong, right? And you punish them, ground them, whatever you do to punish your child. They're pissed off at you and mad at you, but they don't see like I'm being punished because I did this thing. Right?
If I hadn't done that thing, I wouldn't have been punished and I wouldn't be in this situation.
Right, because it's almost like they're incapable sometimes, I think, of that kind of self-reflection.
Well, that makes sense.
So I don't know. I mean, I think it's possible, but I also think, she's young and immature, emotionally immature, and has not really had anyone to help her along. At 18, Shamika left foster care. She had been counting down the days until she could be independent. Shamika met a man named Irving Rudd, who was 16 years older than she. The couple had a whirlwind romance that led to the birth of their child, Relisha. A year later, the couple welcomed a son, Irving Jr. Irving had 2 children from a previous relationship, including twin daughters born in 1991. One of Irving's twin daughters lived only 18 months. In late summer of 1992, Shamika Rudd was taken to the Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C. with severe injuries, including a skull fracture, a cracked lip, and bruising across her body. Sadly, the child passed away. Irving Rudd was charged with first-degree murder after investigators learned that the twins had been victims of physical abuse. Irving reportedly violently assaulted the child on the night she passed away, throwing her into a table, repeatedly hitting her in the chest, and then throwing her onto the couch, where she hit her head on the wooden back. The child instantly fell unconscious.
Oh, my God.
Shamika's twin sustained many of the same injuries and weighed only 10 pounds at 18 months old. An 18-month-old should be at least like 22 plus pounds.
No, yeah, I've never heard of a 10-pound 18-month-old.
The children had been seriously neglected and abused. He eventually confessed but stated that her death was an accident. Irving had never meant to kill her. In the end, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter. He served less time and was released in 2002. So he's released from prison just 3 years before the birth of Relisha.
Gosh, that does not sound like, well, for one, these poor kids, right? His twins.
Yes.
And this sounds like the wrong person for her to get with straight out of foster care.
Yes. Irving wasn't interested in raising Relisha or Irving Jr., and he eventually abandoned Shamika and the kids. Other relatives, including Shamika's sister Ashley, have said that Irving tried to be a good father to the children, but Shamika's animosity stood in the way. Although Shamika claimed he didn't want anything to do with the children, Irving filed for legal custody in 2012. In the documents, Irving stated that he did not believe joint custody was in the children's best interests. Irving failed to show up for court, so the case was dismissed. However, Dylan, Irving believed that Shamika had been abusing the children. A report was filed with social services back in 2007 regarding child abuse. Relisha had bruises on her body, but the agency couldn't determine how she had sustained the injuries, so Shamika continued to raise the children. And we're going to see this as like a consistent theme throughout this case, how social services seems like they don't really do their job.
Damn it. damn it, man. It's all the time, it seems like.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier about foster care system, I'm sure there are many good people in the social service work who try their best. And oftentimes, it seems like they're bound by their office or their supervisors or just regulations. You know what I mean? That it's like even if they want to do more or what they may consider the right thing, they're not allowed to. You know what I mean? It's like the system itself is flawed, and the culture.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's underfunded.
Well, yeah.
They're overworked. They're dealing with mountains of paperwork, which is ridiculous. I mean, they spend more time just doing administrative tasks than actually in homes trying to evaluate and help children.
Yeah, the bureaucracy in the social service system is ridiculous.
And I'm sure that a lot of caseworkers are just burnt out. You know, you're kind of dealing with a lot of the same kinds of people. And I don't mean to make a broad generalization, but I think we all kind of know the folks who continuously get social services called, whether it's from teachers or doctors or whatever. It tends to be like a certain kind of person or families. And, you know, you're dealing with these same people all the time. And a lot of them have animosity, hatred towards you as a social worker, and they're rude and mean and threatening. And I think after a while, some of these people just are so burnt out that they're just like, whatever, and go through the motions of doing the job without actually doing the job. You know what I mean? And that's not an excuse. That's terrible. If you're feeling that way, you obviously need to get out of that line of work.
Yeah, but they're human. I mean, they're human too. And like you said,
they are. It's emotionally draining.
How much of that could you take before from bullshit from the system and then bullshit from the people, some of the people or many of the people you're actually trying to help? I mean,
because I've heard horror stories from social workers, including people I know who've worked in that job, who've gone to school to, in health and human services, technology, that kind of thing, and say, they've been assaulted, they've been threatened, they've had things thrown at them. I mean, guns pulled, that kind of thing when they go to make a home visit. So it's not exactly the best job in the world.
Well, yeah, I guess when you really view it like that, it must be a really tough job.
And think of the lack of funding.
Well, yeah, and I think that right there, that very thing leads to just a lack of funding, the lack of beds, the lack of resources, the lack of foster homes and places to place these children. That really, I mean, from my experience, it has to be a super extreme case before they will actually remove the children from the home or someone's custody. And a lot of times, kids that shouldn't be left in a home end up that way, end up left more or longer than they should be, or in bad circumstances just because they really don't have anywhere to put them.
Well, it's true. I remember before we left North Carolina, Western North Carolina was having a lot of problems recruiting foster parents. People just didn't want to do the job, or they just didn't want to take it on anymore. I'm not going to say foster parenting is a job, but I mean, it is if you think about it. You're taking in a child full time into your home that may have emotional problems, behavioral problems. You just don't know what you're getting, right? When a child comes to you, if they've been abused, what have you. But also, a lot of people are weary of taking in foster children.
Right.
Because of, I don't want, accusations to come about, false accusations, because there have been parents who make false accusations against, the foster parent in order to try to get the kid back in their care. Just things like that. And so you end up maybe with not the best people or just a few families willing to take in children. So where are you supposed to put them?
Well,
you're exactly right.
You end up with someone like who's wants to benefit financially from providing this for this child, and now they should get money and help to provide the home. I agree with that, but that shouldn't be your main concern. It should be so you can, provide a safe home and do something good.
Well, that shouldn't be your main source of income.
No, and it shouldn't. But, I wonder, we'll get back to the case, but I wonder what's going to happen to the foster care system even more so in the future as these younger generations really view the family dynamic and stuff quite differently than generations before. They're settling down much later in life.
If they settle down at all.
And having their own children. And
birth rates are declining.
Birth rates declining. Just a general
less marriages.
Traditional home settings and things like that are change. Everything's changing and becoming less. So, yeah, I mean, I think that all those trends are only going to make put more strain on the foster care system.
Interesting take, Dylan. I haven't really thought about that.
Yeah, that's right. That's what's up.
Look at Dylan being all thought-provoking and shit.
You see, hey, you see what happens when you let me talk?
Shamika had met a man named Antonio Wheeler. Antonio had an equally troubled life, having grown up in the system as well. When Antonio was 12, his stepfather murdered his 4-year-old sister.
Oh, and by the way, what's the man's name?
Irving?
Irving. His credibility is not very strong with me, okay? After what's happened to his poor kids. I mean, I just got to say, for him to throw, and I'm not saying that what he was saying wasn't true as far as abuse allegations and things, but I mean, come on.
No, I will agree with you that Irving has made some very poor decisions in the past. But can people not evolve or change?
Well, they can. He could have sat every day and when he was serving that time and thought about, wow,
I did this horrific thing.
I did this horrific thing. I was
a horrible piece of shit.
Yeah.
And I was on drugs. I mean, I don't know if he was on drugs, but I was on drugs. I was doing this. I was doing that. Like maybe he had a change of heart.
No, and it's possible. I guess we have to give him the outside.
Well, I think I catch myself all the time being like super judgmental about people and like, oh, fuck them. But, we have to consider that you're not the same person you were 20 years ago. I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago. And I'm not excusing what he did because that was monstrous, what he did to those children. And the little girl, I mean, she suffered greatly. But I'm also just saying, like, maybe some people actually do kind of learn a lesson from what they did and can try to be a better person. I don't know.
It could be because you might not expect someone like that, if they hadn't changed at all, they really might not even level allegations of abuse because they wouldn't care. You know what I mean? Or trying to get custody of the kids, that maybe leans more towards what you're saying, that maybe he's changed, evolved, and actually cares about the welfare of the children.
Well, I'm just going to say ahead of time here, I don't feel like there's any adult in this entire case that does right by their child or makes good decisions. I think all of these people are very problematic.
Okay. That's not good.
Okay, so the stepfather, Michael Tudman, had been in a drug-fueled state when he beat the little girl after she interrupted his PCP smoking.
Jesus.
A few years earlier, Antonio's 2-year-old brother had drowned in the bathtub. Michael admitted that he left the child unsupervised in the tub for 40 minutes so he could watch a Redskins game and talk on the phone.
That's crazy.
That is absolutely crazy. Like, none of these people seem to have a fucking clue when it comes to child rearing or just even like being decent human beings.
And that's what the old timers would say. They shouldn't even have a dog, let alone kids.
Exactly. You need a license to drive a car. You need a license to fish. You don't need a license to be a piece of shit parent. Now, after Tudman's arrest, Antonio and his siblings entered the foster care system. While in foster care, Antonio was abused by his foster parents. And I'm not sure if this is like physically, sexually. I'm not sure. I don't have those details. But when Antonio and Shamika met, they trauma bonded and felt they had a lot in common. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's other things they like about each other, but I just feel like when you meet somebody and you kind of bond over the same trauma, I'm not sure that's like a basis for a good relationship.
Well, no, there certainly needs to be more to the relationship. And I think it can give you, if you've had similar experiences, it can give you a perspective that person might not get from everybody. And that might be a good thing in ways. But just when a relationship's wrapped up in all those other emotions and things that you probably haven't properly dealt with, it's usually not a good thing.
Well, yeah, you've got two people who are obviously
Well, it's like hooking up in rehab.
like suffering
Right.
from childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And it's unresolved, and they kind of continue to have problematic lives and dysfunction, and then they get together and create more dysfunction. It's not, I mean,
No, I think
probably
it's
not the best choices, but
more beneficial, even though they sometimes their partner may not understand where they're coming from. But I think it's more beneficial for someone to maybe get with someone who hasn't been through all that, so they can kind of ground them or maybe show them other ways of dealing with things. Or, more tools for your emotional toolbox.
there
Things
you
like
go.
that.
Well, eventually the couple will have 2 children together. So now Shamika's got 4 children. One might assume that since Antonio and Shamika had such adverse childhood experiences, they would want better for the children, right?
Well, yeah.
One would assume. Relisha was nicknamed Little Mama because she was a caregiver for her younger siblings. She would run their bathwater, make sure they didn't eat too much candy, and was always helpful. Relisha was a happy child who thrived on helping. She really loved to be a helper. She would just beam with pride when she was helping, Antonio assumed the role of father to Relisha and her brother Irving Jr. In 2010, social services was contacted again regarding neglect in the home. Relisha's brother had a scheduled surgery, and Shamika failed to take the child to the appointment. Their apartment at this time was described as unsafe. Social workers found the home littered with trash and cigarette butts, describing it as filthy. They're living in squalor.
It's no good.
It's very environmentally, just unsound for children. The children were 4 and under, and Shamika was allowing them to bathe themselves without supervision.
4 kids, 4 and under?
Yes.
Jeez.
And Relisha's the oldest, so she's 4 years old, and she's the one that's like playing mother to these kids, watching them in the bathtub. I mean, should a 4-year-old be responsible for watching her 2-year-old brother in the bathtub?
No. I mean, no way. And people have these limits on age, like when one child can like stay home with the other one or something like that. And you can be like, well, they're a very mature 11-year-old or this or that. And that's true in some cases. But this is 4. There's no way. And that's just too much for her to even have to worry about. She should be able to be a kid.
Social workers didn't remove the children from the home despite the conditions or signs of neglect. So the second time that social services doesn't intervene. Shamika's children were like history repeating itself. They lived in unstable conditions. They moved frequently. During the first 2 years of school, Relisha attended Fairby Hope Elementary School. Teachers noted that Relisha was neglected and always smelled as if she had not bathed. One teacher made a plan with Relisha that every morning before class, they could go to the nurse's office so that the child could clean up. The teacher often provided clean clothes for Relisha, brushed her hair, and gave her lotion. The teacher said Relisha was, quote, a pretty little girl and never taken care of. And the teacher just fell in love with Relisha. The child loved hugs. The teacher often brought toys and little trinkets to the kid, because she cared about her. And she knew that the family didn't have a lot of money and Relisha was being neglected. One day, Relisha asked if she could move in with the teacher. Can I come live with you?
Oh, my God. Breaks your heart.
Yeah, school seemed like the only safe haven Relisha had. But sadly, Relisha's family moved once again, and she lost contact with this teacher.
And I bet neither of them ever forgot each other.
Yeah. I mean, there are really good teachers out there who care so much about their students. And, they find it very heartbreaking, the situation that their students live in. And a lot of teachers go above and beyond, providing clothes, providing food.
They really do.
All kinds of things. And I think that often goes unnoticed or, teachers a lot of times don't seek praise for what they're doing. They kind of do these like silent good deeds,
Well, it's become fashionable to be like, oh, teachers, y'all just complain, all this and that. Teachers are very important. They're a cornerstone profession in a society. And that's why, when we were growing up, the profession was held in a bit of more reverence, much more so than it is nowadays.
It was a very respected position when we were growing up.
Yeah, and it had been that way for decades, and maybe you might even say hundreds of years. It was like lawyers, doctors, architects, and teachers. Yeah, and then of course, firemen, police, all that was respected because it was they play such an important part in your daily lives, and they were very important. And the people that are teachers, I'm sure it's true now too, it's like they were called to be a teacher.
Yeah, definitely.
It's certainly more so than I'm just going to do this because it's a paycheck.
And I get summers off.
Yeah, they didn't think like that. That was just part of the gig, And
well, my mom was a teacher, so I guess I have a special place in my heart for educators and know that most of them really do go above and beyond. I went to a very small elementary school. My mother ended up teaching at that same elementary school when she finished college. And just, based on my mother's classroom, she had kids that were very deprived, neglected, and she would go out of her way to do things for these kids. And many of the teachers did, whether it was like buying them socks and underwear, clothes, bringing them extra snacks or food. A lot of teachers sending home cans of food and kids' book bags because they know the family doesn't have money. And it's really sad that these children are in this situation, but we really should take time to praise these teachers because they do care about kids. They want the best for kids.
It's true.
And they do have a calling, as you said. And so it's really sad. I'm sure this teacher definitely missed Relisha, but it seems like they had a really good bond. And so that makes me happy to know that this little girl had someone in her corner.
There have been times in my youth when I had even, say I stayed somewhere for a year, which was good for me. If I made it through the school year or most of the school year, or stayed in the same school once the school year started, whatever. That was a good thing. And there's a time or two I had a really good teacher who I connected with. And it was a very important relationship for me.
Yeah, I can think of 2 teachers offhand that really made an impact. One was in elementary school and another was a high school teacher. But just their willingness to kind of go above and beyond and befriend you and recognize you as a person and your unique talents or whatever. It really is very meaningful when you're a kid, and especially when you're a kid who feels like you're not seen.
Or no one listens to you.
Or no one really cares what you think, So, again, thank a teacher. Relisha went to a new school where she was a great student. The family lived in an apartment in the Congress Heights neighborhood. Relisha had her own bedroom because she was the only girl. The apartment was described as spacious, which worked well for the family of 6. And this was kind of the first time that, Relisha had her own bedroom, able to kind of do her own little thing.
Oh, well, okay. Now she's living it up, huh?
Well, yeah. It's always, I think, important for kids to have their own space. And siblings sometimes have to share a room. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think, especially if you've shared a room with a sibling and you get your own bedroom, it's a big deal to have your own bedroom, your own stuff, your own place where you maybe feel safe. It's your sanctuary.
Well, especially as they get older.
Because my bedroom, as a kid, it was my sanctuary. It was definitely my safe place to try to avoid things that were going on in my home,
And see, that's your responsibility as a parent. And I'm not the best parent ever. I'm the first one to tell you that. But I think from me having been unstable, and moving around, all that, not much money, one thing I think I did do was, as my kids got older, everybody's going to have their own room. That means if you got 3, 4, 5 kids, you're stacking, you're putting the bar up here even higher. You have to meet that bar. You can't just let 2 or 3 kids be piled up. You can't have a family of 5 in a 2-bedroom house. It's your responsibility to get out there and grind, continue some type of upward mobility, do whatever it takes to get a bigger, proper, comfortable house for them. because that's what you got to do as a parent, especially I felt as a man of the house.
I love your traditional values, Dylan.
Well, I mean, it's your job. That's a big part of your job.
No, you're a great provider. Like, you really have been a great provider for your kids. You've provided for me, for my children. I mean, that you excel at being a provider.
I lack in other areas for sure, but I'm gonna go get that bacon.
Well, just like my dad is not the best. He's actually probably one of the worst dads in the world. But that is one thing I can say about my father, is that he was always a provider. He worked. He taught me a good work ethic. And the man has grinded since I can, remember. If it took 2 jobs, if it meant working overtime, like, it didn't matter. He was going to make sure you had a roof over your head, had clothes on your back, and had something on the table to eat. And fortunately, there were times we, got a little extra, which was nice. But, he was definitely a provider. And it does feel good to know you have a parent that is willing to put their nose to the grindstone and work hard to make sure you have what you need.
And yeah, I think it's very important for kids to have their own space. And I think early on it's important for you to implement privacy. You don't have to be, and it's a tightrope, but especially in this day and age with the internet and all that mess, which is a whole nother conversation. But kids deserve privacy. They deserve their own space.
I like that take, Dylan, because you're correct. Kids do deserve privacy.
Now, if you're worried, I've been through this, that something's wrong or something's going on, or, they're going off the rails, then you may have to invade that, you may have to
take a door off the hinges.
Take a door off the hinges or be in their face more so. But, until that trust is breached, I think even from 6, 7, 8 years old, you should start knocking on doors, announcing yourself before you enter.
Allowing children to bathe separately, not putting siblings in the tub together.
No,
even if they're still little. I mean, I think I've known parents will put the, male and female child in a tub together, and it's like that works to a certain point.
Right.
But then, I think it's good to separate. Everybody gets their own private bath time, shower time, is allowed to go to the bathroom alone, that kind of thing. Well, the apartment building was in poor condition. Antonio noticed the pipes were beginning to burst inside the walls. The landlord was contacted, but instead of helping, he accused the family of creating the problems, even suggesting they pay for repairs. Like, according to Antonio, the landlord asked if his 2-year-old son had been, messing with the pipes in the wall.
What's your boy know about water pressures? Because I think he knows a lot.
I seen your kid was playing plumber. What'd he mess up?
I seen he had that big old monkey wrench.
Well, I mean, this is not uncommon, sadly. There are a lot of landlords who maybe don't pass the smell test, you know what I'm saying?
Well, no, it's true. And it gives, can give all landlords a bad rap. But when you have one who doesn't care, I've had all kinds. I've had good ones, bad ones.
Well, it sounds like this guy was more, they called him the landlord, but I think he was more of a property manager. So he's managing properties for another company.
That's almost worse.
So he kind of maybe has his hands tied about what he's allowed to do.
Well, and it's not their property directly. They don't really care. They might have a little less skin in the game. So I think a property manager situation in ways can be worse.
Well, according to the family, the landlord avoided many repairs and maintenance. Antonio did a lot of the work himself. Then there was some kind of issue with the furnace, like the air conditioning was freezing over, and they brought somebody in with a chisel and hammer to break this ice up, and it started sparking.
Gosh.
Antonio told the landlord, I'm not going to pay rent until this problem is addressed. You need to get in here. You need to fix these pipes. You need to do something about this sparking, AC furnace unit. This is a fire hazard.
Well, yeah, that's not good at all.
And in Washington, D.C., tenants have the right to refuse to pay rent if a landlord is not making repairs. Yet when Antonio made this threat, he was informed that Shamika had not been paying rent. At the time, Antonio worked at Ben & Jerry's. Each payday, he handed Shamika money to cover the bills, including the rent. The family was 4 months behind on their rent payments. The landlord at the time was black as well. This is an African-American family. And he would go on to say, like, he really hated evicting black families. You know, he's from this area. This is his community. He doesn't want to, like, evict these families, especially when they have children, but he had no choice. Shamika was receiving a rent subsidy, and the apartment was inspected before she moved in, and she didn't make any complaints or report any problems with the apartment. Shamika's mother says her grandson, Relisha's brother, had severe asthma and that doctors suggested the carpet be removed. Melissa says that's when the landlord evicted the family because they asked if they could take out the carpet. But the landlord's saying that's not true. She was behind on rent. She gets rent subsidy, and if she's not paying her rent, then that subsidy goes away. Like, we have to report she's not paying rent, and that subsidy stops.
Now, in a situation like this, it's hard to know who's telling the truth because oftentimes if you have people who don't want to pay the rent, which I'm dead against, I've always paid my bills, paid what I owed, because even if I'm dead broke, I can at least lay my head down and know that my bills are paid, the lights won't get cut off. I'm not saying I hadn't had a hiccup here or there, or had to rob Peter to pay Paul, but I always made it work one way or the other.
That's just what working families do sometimes.
Yeah, but just straight out not paying your rent for months on end and then acting like the landlord's an asshole because they want their money or whatever, that's not okay in my book.
Well, in this situation, I am going to side with the landlord because I think the federal housing subsidy, Section 8, whatever you want to call it, doesn't lie. And if they know you're not paying your rent, it's not coming in, and it's reported, then they're going to take away the subsidy. So the fact that they were like, well, we're not going to pay the subsidy anymore, they need to be evicted, lets me know that they weren't paying rent.
Right. And they do have standards for Section 8 homes for them to be, they might not be a mansion, but they do have to be in working order, especially when you first move in. That's not saying that a repair didn't come up along the way later and was ignored by somebody, but they do have pretty decent standards as far as what the home has to be to a certain level.
Yeah, it has to have a certain amount of bedrooms.
Well, it has to have that, and
heating,
it's down to
water, plumbing,
screen on every window with no holes in it. It's pretty comprehensive.
Right. Well, this eviction was traumatic for the family. There seems to be a lot of demonization of landlords. I see people all the time on social media like, kill the landlords, which doesn't make any sense to me because then where are you going to live?
Well, it's like during the pandemic, people's like, well, I don't have to pay my rent now. It's like most landlords, very seldom do they outright own all the properties. They're typically paying.
If you're renting for from a big corporation that owns multiple units or something.
But the Joe Blow landlord, he typically owes a note on the house,
or it's a home he inherited, and he still has to pay property taxes and
maintenance, and maintain it, and all kinds of all that stuff. And so it's and if they didn't rent this home out, there wouldn't be any rentals available. So it's really kind of crazy how people run with that all landlords bad bullshit.
Well, I recognize there's a power dynamic at play. Landlords control housing, which is a basic need. Yet tenants often avoid taking responsibility for unpaid rents. And it's not the landlord's fault that the rent wasn't paid. And like I said, Shamika was getting subsidy, which many of us do not get. And we're on the hook for our rent regardless of life's hiccups.
Right.
And just because you qualify for subsidy, that doesn't excuse you from paying
the part you owe.
Which
should be even easier since you're getting a subsidy,
right?
Well,
it doesn't seem, in my research, I don't believe Shamika ever worked a job, despite having 4 kids. And Antonio, it seems, worked kind of maybe on and off.
Sporadically.
Yeah. And that's, no matter how you look at it, that's not a good situation. If you have children and you're adults in the home and you're able-bodied, you have a responsibility to work and take care of your family.
Yeah, and if you have 4 children, 4 and under, right? So in the last 5 years or so, you've stayed pregnant. It's irresponsible to keep having children if you don't want to work. I'm sorry. There's no other way to put it. I'm not being mean. I just, from my viewpoint, my perspective, it's a very irresponsible thing to do. And like I've said many times before, financial instability, no upward mobility, all that is a form of abuse because it affects children. It affects them emotionally. It affects them physically. It's not okay.
Well, you know, we've been, this is going off the rail here a little bit, but we have been watching My 600-Pound Life, which I never watch reality shows, but we've kind of gotten into watching this. And I've noticed some of these people discussing growing up where there was a lack of food in the home, or, you know, maybe sometimes they would have food, sometimes they wouldn't. It wasn't consistent. So once they became adults, they started like eating because they felt that any minute they might not have food again.
Right.
And that's sad to think about.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just
that we have people living here in the richest country, one of the richest countries in the world, and we have people who go hungry.
Yeah. Food insecurity is real. You know, tonight, maybe even someone listening to this podcast, to this episode, will worry about where their next hot meal's coming from. And it's ridiculous, especially given the amount of food thrown away every single day. I mean, it just really blows your mind, right?
It does. Shamika's sister allowed the 2 adults and 4 children to move into her 1-bedroom apartment rather than face homelessness. Relisha loved living with her Aunt Ashley. Relisha considered Ashley's apartment, quote, nicer than any place they had ever lived. Of course, the situation was not ideal. Ashley didn't mind how cramped it was because she didn't want to see the children be on the streets or in a shelter. Their other living situations had been apartments plagued by gang violence and gunfights. However, Ashley knew they couldn't live with her forever because of tenant rules. Eventually, she told Antonio that he was going to need to seek shelter for the family. You're either going to have to get a job in an apartment or you're going to have to move into a shelter. Because I don't want to get kicked out of my apartment because I'm letting you guys stay here.
Well, no,
which is completely reasonable.
Well, yeah, this is a stopgap for just the moment. This is just the answer for the next week or two.
But we have to come up with a solution.
Yeah, because it's untenable almost in the very beginning in a situation like this. Because very seldom is there enough room, and that you never know what those people's lease says or what their property manager or landlord says.
Most apartments have very strict visitor.
You have to be on the lease.
Yeah, who can stay there.
And you don't want to mess it up for them because they're going out on a limb to help you. So you got to be into an emergency code red mode in a situation like this. Like you got to be willing to do anything, whatever it takes, to get your family back into a house. But I'm afraid that they're not built like that.
Antonio didn't want the family to move into a shelter, but Shamika told him, like, we have no choice. It's winter. There's no way we can live on the streets during these cold months with 4 children. No way. Shelter space was limited, and an agency put the family up at a motel until space was available. So after a year, the family was placed in D.C. General Family Shelter.
So they were in a hotel.
For a year.
For a year.
Yes.
I'm not even going to comment. You had
in a year's time, nobody got a job or tried to save money for housing.
Yeah, I've never in my life had a year of breathing room. Ever.
Well, like I said before, I'm not sure any of the adults in this situation are doing right or are stepping up to the plate or like doing maybe what they need to be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was afraid of that.
Well, the D.C. General Family Shelter was not a good place to raise children. It was once D.C. General Hospital, which served poor people, and closed in 2001. Washington, D.C. didn't have public housing at this time, so the hospital was opened as a low-barrier shelter where people could warm up during winter. As the number of people needing temporary shelter grew, it was converted into a homeless shelter. Conditions were terrible. This place was crawling with bed bugs, major bed bug infestation. The bathrooms were disgusting. Everything was dirty. People lived in hospital rooms, like whole families, and slept on rolling beds. There might be 2 dressers in the room, like for personal items. And they did have a sink and a toilet in the room, but they did not have a shower in the room. There was a communal shower on each floor. So they would have to go to a communal shower, which, is not the safest, best thing. I mean, do you really want to send your kids to a communal shower?
No.
Who knows who might be lurking in there? Men, women. These are co-ed showers.
Bed bugs?
Yeah. Well, across the street was also a methadone clinic and a correctional facility. So you had a lot of drug addicts and maybe unsavory individuals hanging around, loitering out front, making their way into the shelter.
This is, if I could imagine an environment I would not want to have multiple children in, this would be it. This would be like top 3.
I would, if I were Antonio or I was Shamika, I don't know that, like, at the point, like, if children were all in school or if we have young children, but at this point, like, one of us is going to work our ass off, or we're both going to work opposite schedules to get enough money to get out of this place. I mean, that's just my mindset, is I'm not going to this place. If I am stuck in this place,
it's only going to be for a week or 2.
It's not going to be for a long time.
Or a month.
But if I was living in a hotel for a year, that would give me plenty, like a launching pad to save money, to get a job, to be saving up so I could get a place to live.
Yeah, and that's what's killing me is there's 2 of them.
Yes.
So one of you, and many people do this. That's what people's like, well, what am I supposed to do? You can do what millions of people do every day. There's many people that one works full-time one shift and one works at least part-time opposite shift.
I've known a lot of families who did this because they have children and somebody has to be at home with the kids and daycare's expensive. So mom's at home all day with the kids while dad's at work, and then dad comes home and mom goes to her job.
Yeah.
And it sucks. It's not ideal, but it's survival. Like, it's how people make things work.
Yeah, exactly. It's what you got to do.
There were 600 children living in this squalor. The place didn't have a playground or any activities for the kids. They mostly played outside near the street with cardboard boxes. And you have to remember, the street is lined with more homeless people, drug addicts, people coming and going from the methadone clinic,
and the jail.
People being released from the correctional facility that often don't have a place to go either. So you just got a lot of different kinds of folks hanging out around the shelter.
And we can't forget this is a low barrier shelter, which means it has different standards on sobriety.
Typically doesn't have security.
Drug use, likely very little to no security. Probably skeleton crew staff who's trying their damnedest with what they got. But, I mean, it sounds overwhelmed. It just all around bad.
Well, the shelter had many incidents of assaults, fights, domestic violence, sexual assault, and it was a hotspot for drug addicts and dealers. Because if you've got a lot of substance abuse disorder folks lingering, you're going to have drug dealers in the area,
right,
providing drugs.
And this is going to bring more crime, more violence. There's no way around it.
It was not uncommon to see the hallways hosting addicts who were shooting up, drug needles everywhere. It was an open-air drug market, buying and selling drugs in the public spaces in plain view, and nothing's being done about it.
Jesus.
People described it as something out of a horror movie, a scary place for anyone, especially children. Relisha hated living there. At times, she would fake asthma attacks to stay at her Aunt Ashley's apartment. She called this place a trap house. Relisha said the food was terrible, the rooms were infested with bugs and creatures, because, there's mice, there's rodents, squirrels, who knows what.
And human creatures, I'm sorry.
Well, there's that. And often it's cold due to heating outages. Residents filed complaints. Relisha begged to stay at her grandmother's house or with her aunt. Meals were served in a cafeteria at the shelter, but the food was often old and moldy. Antonio would cut the hot dogs open to make sure they did not have mold inside. So, like, not only are these people living in these terrible conditions, but the food that's being provided by this group that contracts with Washington, D.C. to provide these homeless shelters is feeding these people like terrible food, unhealthy food, unsafe food, dangerous food.
You know how old a hot dog's got to be worried about mold? Like, seriously. You could leave a pack of hot dogs on the counter for 2 weeks and probably eat it and be okay and never see mold.
It's full of preservatives.
Yeah. So, I mean, damn.
The shelter participated in a program called Homeless Children's Playtime Project. A few hours each week, Relisha was allowed to play and hang out with other kids. And as a social butterfly, Relisha enjoyed the special break from life in the shelter. They did art projects. She danced. She loved dancing. Relisha played with dolls. It was just a small escape from reality.
Oh, and I bet she relished every minute of it.
She definitely did, Dylan. 51-year-old Khalil Tatum was a cafeteria worker and janitor at the shelter. Khalil was generous and kind. While most of the staff members were rude and dismissive, Khalil would engage in conversations with the people who lived there. He took an interest in the families and got to know each resident. Khalil made these disenfranchised people feel seen. If Shamika and Antonio were late for dinner or missed a meal, Khalil often would wrap up food for them and would even bring it to their room. Like, I wanted to make sure you guys had something to eat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Everyone called him Mr. Tatum. He was outgoing, warm, attentive. Nobody had a bad word to say about the man. He was a sharp dresser and would hand out money to kids so they could get gumballs from a machine. Sometimes Mr. Tatum gave them fresh $20 bills.
Damn.
So this man, as you can tell, he is loved by the children especially, because he's, spoiling them in ways they don't normally get this kind of attention or,
right.
Little things, gumballs. Mr. Tatum gave the kids toys. He would buy clothes and, like I said, give them money. Many people thought he was being nice. Some parents found it slightly uncomfortable that a grown man would take such an interest in these children. One resident noticed that Khalil only seemed to provide these special gifts and money to little girls in the building.
Yeah, see, I'm always... Now, someone could just be a nice person, right? Someone can never not have their own kids, but love kids. I've seen it before.
Yeah.
And, but I'm always just, even when there's no reason, really, it's someone who's really into other people's kids. I don't know. Maybe it's just a defense mechanism on my part. Always makes me wary. I don't know. It kind of gives me the creeps to a degree.
I know what you mean. I always feel like I don't want parents to think I'm a weirdo, but if we go to a cookout or a party or something, I tend to always somehow end up befriending the little kids.
Right.
And sometimes if parents are busy socializing and maybe the kids aren't exactly being watched to, like a hawk, because I'm like a helicopter. I'm like, everybody be safe. No, stay out of the road. I find myself being like that person who's watching the kids and making them a plate or trying to help them. If they need to go to the bathroom, you walk them to the bathroom, whatever. But I always worry that parents are like, who's this weirdo?
Yeah, but you're a mom of two.
But it's really just out of concern for the kids, because I know as a parent, you can get caught up talking to your friend and all of a sudden you look and your young child is gone.
Right.
And you're at a party or a cookout and there's 40 people.
Well, and the kids are all running all over the place.
There's other kids. So, I just always am very mindful of is somebody watching the kids? Do I need to step in? How can I help here, manage and wrangle these children? But I hope parents don't look at me and think I'm a weirdo. Because I do like kids,
Well, I do too.
Kids are fun. So in the beginning, Shamika was grateful for the gifts. Khalil was providing gifts that she could not afford for Relisha. Relisha's getting new clothes, new shoes, maybe a fancy book bag, dolls.
Yeah, but I mean, just her out of your 4 kids, she's getting all this stuff from this guy?
Well, there is that, Dylan. which we will discuss. Khalil's real name was Carl Lee Tatum, and he was a convicted criminal. The Community Partnership for the Prevention of Homelessness, a nonprofit that ran the shelter under contract with the city of Washington, D.C., did not hire convicted criminals, allegedly, so it's unclear how Tatum was given a job. He did undergo like a background check and screening. All the employees did.
Well, considering the state of the shelter and everything going on, it makes you wonder how good of a background check they did.
See, what's really frustrating is you have this nonprofit, right, that is contracted to run these shelters, and there's really no telling how much money this nonprofit is receiving, because we know like billions have been poured into fighting homelessness, and somehow you pump billions and billions of dollars, and millions are allotted each, budget year for these shelters and federal dollars. And yet somehow it seems like that money doesn't always benefit the people who are staying in the shelter, because why would they be eating moldy hot dogs? Like, it just seems to me that there would be some kind of oversight with this nonprofit, that they are to provide like fresh food.
Yeah, see, that's the whole time you've been describing this. Here's a shelter in our nation's capital.
Or that there should be some standard of cleanliness or safety or something. It
might not be the best. At times it may be overcrowded and overwhelmed. That's going to happen. But I hate to think that the funding being provided to this company, whoever is doing it certainly could, seems to me, is enough, more than enough to support a better, higher level of food, cleanliness. Maybe everything wouldn't be breaking. But see, I hate the term nonprofit. I really do.
Because someone usually is profiting.
It's not for
when
your
you
profit.
have like an executive director who's making like $250,000 a year.
And that's the problem. For every dollar donated or given or allocated from the city or whatever, how much actually makes it to the road? How much of the rubber meets the road? And oftentimes, if you look at the numbers, you're blown away.
They don't jive.
No, it's like 10 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents of every dollar's actually in action to actually help, to really help the people. And it's all that administrative bullshit. Everybody's got an assistant. You got the director. You got the blah this and the blah that. And I really think that setup, the NGOs and the nonprofits, that machine, which is worth billions and billions and billions of dollars in allocated funds and grants and all that, I think that is what's stopping us from solving the homeless problem in America.
Well, if you're benefiting from it, billions are being pumped into your organization for years and years, and you're still not seeing results, and you're actually seeing things are worse.
Right, because then you need more money. I need more money.
And then it's just like, how much money do we keep throwing at this?
Right.
And it's never being solved, but why would you want to solve it when
you'll be out of a job
from it?
Yeah, okay.
Well,
but,
I mean,
no,
I think it's
a
easy
problem.
to see. You look at Seattle, you look at Portland, you look at Los Angeles, San Francisco, and those states, just the amounts of money that have been poured into those states.
They've spent the most, and the problem is the worst.
Yes.
So something's not working.
Something's not working. It just doesn't seem like it's something you can like just spend your way out of.
Well,
I don't know.
No.
There has to be some other ideas or something, right? Because it does not seem to be working at all. General Family Shelter previously had issues when a report released in 2010 stated that some of the staff members had solicited sex from residents in exchange for favors. But it turns out, Dylan, these favors were just things like extra blankets or more milk or juice for their children.
And I knew that's what it was going to be. I knew it was going to be some disgusting shit like that. Hey, you want a hot dog with no mold on it? Hook a brother up. And that's because when you allow, see, that's another thing about it. When you have a situation like this, a facility like this, and this type
it seems like there's no oversight.
This type of squalor and just dereliction of duty, there's always people
looking to take advantage.
looking to take advantage of a situation
Absolutely.
like this, of people's despair and their damn, gosh, it's disgusting. And it is, like you said, to solicit sex from someone to give them extra juice, like for their kid or something, is very, very disgusting thing to do, right? I mean, it's one of the most terrible things you could do, to take advantage of someone like that. But humans are just, they're not good at heart. You see, a lot of people believe that everyone's mostly good and there's just some bad ones. I think the point of civilization is to keep us from acting on our true nature, because I just really do think all we are is smart animals.
Well, here's an example, Dylan, and then we'll get back on track. But recently in Jackson County, North Carolina, where we lived once upon a time, in the Silva area, I went to college in Cullowhee, like very familiar with this area. The former executive director for a homeless shelter was arrested and charged with multiple felony counts of obtaining property by false pretenses after authorities accused her of embezzling $100,000 in funds from the shelter.
There you go.
Greta Michelle Worley, age 60, was arrested on March 31st. The arrest warrant was issued the day before. And it seems that she embezzled money from HERE, which is like a nonprofit temporary emergency shelter for the homeless. She was the executive director since 2022. And so from January of 2023 to October of 2025, Worley used credit cards, debit cards, money, cash, and numerous goods and services from the homeless shelter. Her family members were issued multiple credit cards in the shelter's name for personal benefit. So they were out like spending $100,000 of this homeless shelter's money, which is given by, the town, the county. I'm sure there's some state and federal dollars, but also donations. I mean, like, there are a lot of people in the community who donate money to this organization because they want to help the people in their community. And then you have someone like Mrs. Worley and her family stealing large amounts of money.
And we know, like you said, that area. It's not a very big area.
No.
It's certainly not a super financed area. It's a bit impoverished. I mean, it really is. So $100,000 in 2 years is a significant chunk of funding that's been taken away from that one shelter.
A very rural area, yes.
Yeah.
And that is just one example, I'm sure, of what's happening all over the country.
Oh, it's in the billions, honey.
Yeah. Well, like I was mentioning, Khalil Tatum had a long rap sheet. In the 1980s, he was arrested numerous times. He spent time in prison between 1993 and 2003, and then again between 2004 and 2011. So he spent a total of 17 years behind bars for burglary, larceny, and breaking and entering.
Serious crimes.
But is somehow allowed to work at this shelter. After his latest release, Khalil and his wife Andrea Denise Tatum lived a quiet life in Southeast Washington. According to family, Khalil, quote, worshipped the ground his wife walked on. They attended church together. The couple married in 1990, and it seems like Andrea stood by him even when he was in prison for 17 years. And they had issues like most married couples. Andrea had struggled with substance abuse, I guess early on, but had gotten clean. She raised 5 children and was very active in church and in community volunteering. She worked with a nonprofit that served LGBTQ community members in the area. And then she volunteered at different homeless shelters, soup kitchens. So she was very active. Like, she wanted to make a difference. And people said, she was a good person, really outgoing, kind, friendly. While residents found Khalil to be also hardworking, charming, and caring, people began noticing that he took a special interest in Relisha Rudd. Not only did he give Relisha gifts, but he took her on outings, such as to the mall and even to see Disney on Ice.
What are we doing here, people? I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, Shamika also allowed Khalil to take Relisha to his home for overnight visits.
I mean, how many times can you fail your child? Like, seriously, you're already in this fucked up situation. There's no other way to describe it. You've had more than enough time to get your shit together. You had a year plus between staying with your sister and being put up in a hotel. There's 2 of you, and you got 4 kids, 4 young kids, and you're just fucking twiddling your thumbs. And now here you are at some hellscape of a fucking shelter. I mean, let's be honest. I wouldn't want someone I hated to go to this place. It sounds terrible. It sounds scary. I could only imagine from the perspective of a child. And so the other thing you're going to do is let this dude, this kind of creepy dude who seems to really like your little girl, take her around and do whatever, man. I'm starting to get pissed now. It's just fucking ridiculous.
I was interested in your reaction because, again, a lot of people share the same feelings, Dylan.
I mean, how can you not?
But there are also others who defend Shamika and her choices to the end.
I just don't. Personal responsibility. That's it.
It's very lacking in today's society. Shamika will justify allowing her daughter to stay over with this strange man by saying she thought it was a good break for her daughter, like being away from the shelter.
I know how you can give her a really long break from the shelter. Get a fucking job and get your shit together and get a house for your kids.
Relisha's home life wasn't improving. In 2013, Child and Family Services became involved again after a neglect report was filed regarding Shamika and Antonio. A social worker had witnessed Shamika abuse one of her younger sons by slamming him to the ground and busting his lip. The children were also being verbally abused. Shamika and Antonio were also said to leave the children alone for extended periods of time at this shelter, unsupervised.
My God.
No charges were filed, and the children continued living with their parents, even though this was witnessed by a social worker who done seen it with their own eyes, but somehow it's not a problem that she body slammed her kid to the ground and gave him a busted lip.
Yeah, that's just the old school discipline. I remember slamming my kids.
No,
What the fuck?
I'm like, no, you didn't.
Yeah, I could put them old DDT. I'd be like, now you're going to learn. You're going to learn about actions and the consequences.
Whatever. You're one of those parents who felt guilty if you had to punish your kids. You scold Rufus for doing something like pissing on your shoes, right? And then he looks all sad, and then you go in the other room and are like, oh my gosh, I was hateful with Rufus.
Yeah, I feel bad you even talking about
And
that.
then you apologize to him. And then he goes back and pisses on your stuff again.
Him just a little baby.
See? Try to act all tough on this podcast.
He got control of his pee-pees.
You're full of crap. Just a big old softy. Now, Ashley, Auntie Ashley, she started noticing Shamika was distancing herself. And at first she thought it was because maybe Shamika was angry that she couldn't allow the family to stay at her apartment. And that's why she was kind of withdrawing from the family. And it sounds like they were all close. You know, Shamika was close with her sister Ashley. She's close with her mom, Melissa. She saw the children regularly, but Relisha was often not at these visits. When Ashley would ask, where's Relisha, Shamika would say she was staying with her, quote, godfather.
Okay.
Now, Ashley didn't question Shamika further. She was kind of like, well, it's her daughter. I don't want to press her too hard because at the end of the day, it's her child and she can make decisions for her children. But she also didn't really understand who this godfather was, who's she talking about. One time Relisha was at Ashley's when an unknown man called to say he was picking the child up. Now, Relisha's 8 years old. And Ashley's freaked out. She has no idea who this person is. Why is this strange man calling my house? How does he have my number? And why is he saying he's going to come pick up my niece?
What the hell?
When she addressed it with Shamika, she was told Khalil Tatum was, quote, the godfather. And when Ashley told her mother, Melissa, she was reassured that the man was just helping the family out, that Ashley shouldn't worry. He's not a stranger. He's their friend. He's a good person. I met him. He made me feel comfortable.
I'll be by later to pick up Relisha.
Yes.
And I'll bring the cannolis.
Yeah, he's gonna bring her a cannoli and he's gonna leave the gun. Now, eventually, Relisha began spending weekends with Khalil at his home from Friday after school to late Sunday evening, and no one seemed to be concerned about this. Khalil had ingratiated himself to this family, and they were being groomed alongside 8-year-old Relisha.
Yeah, and okay, obviously they've made a bunch of poor choices and continue to make poor choices. But I do think we have to consider their perspective as well in the midst of all of whatever they're dealing with, their inability to get their shit together, it seems. You have this guy who sounds like he's charming. He doesn't seem like, he doesn't sound like a big scary, monster of a guy or nothing like that. He seems like he can talk the talk, charming. And I'm sure there's other kids that like,
well-dressed, well-groomed.
And maybe from their perspective is he's helping us. My daughter's lucky that this nice guy, this nice man is helping her out or whatever. It's hard to even say, but you know what I mean.
Well, we'll discuss this further. So when Relisha would return on Sundays, she would have her nails done or would be wearing like an expensive new outfit. At Christmas, he gifted Relisha a brand new tablet. While the family thinks Khalil is a heaven send, let's be honest, Relisha's in trouble.
Well, yeah.
Relisha would allegedly throw tantrums if she wasn't allowed to go with Khalil. When she was visiting her Aunt Ashley, Relisha wanted to call him on the phone, and at no point did Antonio or Shamika question why Khalil never invited Relisha's 3 brothers to go out or spend time with them, or why the 3 brothers were not receiving gifts.
Or any attention at all, it seems.
They weren't invited for the weekend. He didn't take them to Disney on Ice. It was just Relisha. When she was at the Tatum home on the weekends, Relisha spent time playing with the Tatum's granddaughter. Khalil and Andrea, according to relatives, took great care of Relisha. They said when she was at the home, she seemed happy. The Tatum family thought she was a smart child. She was funny, sweet. They watched, the Tatum's daughter watched, mom and dad fix her food, make sure she had her bath, fix her hair, took her to do things. So, even the Tatum's children were like, this is okay.
Right.
Like, mom and dad are they're doing fine with this. It's no big deal. Okay, so some bed check reports at the shelter showed that half the time, Shamika's children were unaccounted for. However, the record keeping was not very good, and staff members were not actually going door to door to check on residents like they were supposed to.
Imagine that.
But it seems like when they did, Shamika, her children were not with her. In February of 2014, Relisha told a staff member at the Playtime Project that she wanted to speak to someone. 3 people, volunteers and the site manager, took her into a private room. Relisha confided that she had been feeling sad, but she would not further elaborate. Instead, she went back to get a snack with the other kids. She didn't say anything else about it. Even though they, tried to press her what's bothering you, what's going on, she wouldn't say. On February 26th of 2014, Khalil asked if Relisha could spend the night with him. Shamika gave permission, and at 7 p.m., a security video showed Relisha dressed in a blue winter coat, wearing pink winter boots, carrying a white plastic bag, walking down a hallway at the Holiday Inn Express in Northeast Washington, D.C. A few hours later, another hotel on New York Avenue Northeast would show video footage of Relisha and Khalil. So a second hotel. And this would be the last time anyone would see Relisha Rudd.
Damn.
Now, we're going to end part 1 here. I think this is a good stopping point.
Yeah, I'm going to have to. I need a break.
Now, there are folks, as you mentioned, who think Shamika was just trying to, give her daughter some happiness, that Khalil was a good person, taking an interest in her child, providing things she couldn't provide, while other people believe Shamika was getting money, basically trafficking her child to this man.
Damn.
And that she wasn't questioning what was going on because he's giving her money.
Because she didn't care.
And she didn't care because this child's out of her hair. It's one less kid to have to worry about. She's somewhere else. Somebody else is taking care of her.
Well,
and
I
that, she may have known something was going on. And that, there are people, if you research this case, that believe Shamika essentially handed her child over to a predator.
Well, it makes you wonder, because how could you not, even, it doesn't matter how sophisticated or quote unquote smart you are. You got to have some kind of your antennas got to go up on some of this, right? Something about it's got to make you wonder or question, or even if it's at the beginning, like this man's giving, if he keeps on, you're like, hey, it's okay. Thanks for, taking an interest in my daughter's well-being, but this is a little too much.
Well, yeah, there was an example of
frequent.
Another resident at the shelter. She had a young daughter as well, and her daughter had gotten a pet turtle. Khalil went out and bought a turtle tank and spent money buying, I guess, accessories for the tank. It was a pretty nice gift. Brought it to their room, and the mother was like, I appreciate what you're doing, but this isn't appropriate.
Right. So instantly,
right,
like, this is too much.
And he was very pissed off and basically stormed off, and then never bought the kid anything else again.
There you go.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
Well, the case itself tells me a lot of things, Dylan, but I just don't know how you can make excuses for Shamika. It does not seem like she is maybe the most stable parent. She's clearly not working to provide for her children, maybe not taking the best care of them. Who knows where they're staying, as they're only with her, it seems like 50% of the time. She's had multiple reports of abuse. Social workers have seen her abusing the children. And then now she's handing her daughter off to a strange man. Again, I'm not sure how. It just seems indefensible to me.
No, well, it is. Even if she didn't know that.
But a lot of people want to paint Shamika as a victim as well.
No, I refuse to do that. The both of them, this is their fault this happened. I'm sorry. You keep hanging your kid out to dry. You're leaving them in these vulnerable positions, in these terrible environments, and then something bad happens, and you're going to be like, oh, my God, I can't believe this happened. I'm surprised it hadn't happened already.
Well, just wait until we get into part 2, because you are going to be further shocked by Shamika's response, the number of days that pass where she maybe does not know where her daughter is or what's going on with her daughter, is completely out of contact. All of this is going to come out in part 2. We're going to further discuss, what happens, the impact it has on the community, the family. It's a really tragic story, Dylan. A lot of people are affected by it. And you may continue with your conclusion of Shamika and Antonio, or perhaps something will change your mind. I'm not sure. We'll see.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm pissed, man. This is too much.
It is a very frustrating case, because it does seem, in my opinion, that this child was failed across the board.
And
not just Relisha, but also her brothers.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, during all this, what is even happening to them? Seriously, because let's be honest, they're not receiving proper care, guidance, or even nutrition, it sounds like.
Well,
All right.
thank you for sitting down with me to discuss Relisha Rudd's case. This is part 1. We will be dropping part 2 next time.
And thank you for having me, and thank you for all your hard work on this case. But I just want to point out,
Thank you for all your seriousness.
it's not easy what I bring to this table either, because, I mean, it's not that easy to make all those noises that I make
Okay.
when we first start.
You're saying it takes talent,
Well, it's just
practice.
Yeah, effort, a lot of time. What they say, 10,000 hours. You can consider yourself a master. Dare I even say a genius? So I've really spent many, many hours over the years.
10,000 hours. So you're telling me like you're a masturbator? But
yeah.
I'm here all night, folks. All right, Dylan, enough with the noises.
You hear
If
that
you
water
have
dripping?
opinions on this case, you may email us at mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com. Give us a follow on Instagram. You can find us at Mountain Murders. And if you're feeling froggy, you can always join us at Patreon. That's patreon.com/mountainmurderspodcast. We do appreciate all the folks who have provided support through Patreon. It definitely helps us keep the podcast going. Almost 8 years in, Dylan. This is our 8th year podcasting. So I'm assuming we have probably over 10,000 hours of podcasting time. So does that make us professionals? Are we expert level podcasters at this point?
We're pod masters.
I'm the master of my pod. No, I'm not.
And yes, thank you, patrons. Thank you, listeners. We really appreciate you and cannot wait to drop in on you again.
We'll be back.
Bye.